In the late afternoon of Sunday, December 29th, a Lockheed Martin corporate jet left Jefferson County Airport just south of Boulder with the Ramsey family. JonBenet's body left on a Delta Airlines flight from Denver International Airport. 2 hours later, Fleet White called Detective Arndt and asked her to retrieve JonBenet's favorite toy from her bedroom so the family could bury her with her kitty. The day before, one of Patsy Ramsey's sisters had gone into the house with police permission and taken out an oil painting, several American Girl dolls, as well as a portfolio of JonBenet's pageant photographs.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Now, why was the retrieving of JonBenet's dolls of all things, high on the list of items Patsy's sister was asked to raid from the crime scene? And why was an oil painting taken as well? And was a My Twin doll one of the items seized by Patsy's sister? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please hit the thanks button and let's get started. So you may have noticed we've levitated out of the Ramsey home in the previous episode. We floated back in time, not far, just a couple of months from the incident, to an art class Patsy attended. Now let's levitate back inside the Ramsey home and into a room you almost never hear about, the playroom. Have you ever seen a picture of the playroom? Do you even know where it is? It's situated between JonBenet's bedroom and Burke Ramsey's bedroom. Did you know there was a broken door, a door off its hinges in the playroom? This broken door was arguably the only broken door in the entire Ramsey mansion. How did it break? And inside this playroom that we never get to see was a Christmas gift many of us underestimate and overlook. The life-size My Twin doll, custom-made to look exactly like JonBenet. Linda Arndt mentions this doll in her report. She talks about Officer Weiss pointing out a bedroom located west of JonBenet's bedroom. That's John Andrews' bedroom. I entered into this bedroom a few steps but did not touch anything. That's where that rucksack with a rope inside it was found on the chair. Officer Weiss then walked east along the second floor hallway into the children's playroom area. I noticed that there was a life-size Barbie doll standing next to the north window. Well, it wasn't a Barbie doll, but it was life-sized. The doll was not clothed. Now, do you think that's something a little girl would do? Remove the clothes of a look-alike doll and prop it up against a window? Frankly, I'm surprised this hasn't made it into the annals of the intruder theory. I mean, I think Lou Smith missed a vital opportunity here. In theory, he could theorize that a lurker, a passerby, saw the doll through this north window, thought it was a real person, came in for a closer look, and then spied JonBenet, and thus his nefarious plan was hatched. It's an interesting hypothetical, but not what I think happened, nor how I think the doll is relevant. Before we get to that, let's educate ourselves on this doll via 7 shocking insights from JonBenet's creepy, life-size My Twin doll. Number 1. Patsy hid the JonBenet lookalike doll in the basement. Now this is an excerpt from The Death of Innocence. Another strange experience happened on that 1996 Christmas Eve. I had seen the My Twin doll advertised in the Denver airport terminal before Christmas and ordered one for JonBenet. The craftsmen groom and mold the doll so that it looks as close as possible to the picture sent to them. As John and I had placed all the gifts under the Christmas tree that Christmas Eve, I hurried about the house, putting the final touches on the room so that when the children got up the next morning it would be perfect. JonBenet's My Twin doll had been hidden on a top shelf in the laundry room in the basement for several weeks. Right? That's the important part. Patsy had hidden JonBenet's My Twin doll, a doll that was life-size, inside the basement for several weeks. That's where she chose to hide a doll from her own children. She says, after I had everything else in place, I went to get the doll, which was packed in a rectangular white shipping carton. Carefully, I pulled the box down from the shelf and set it on top of the washing machine. I lifted the lid slowly. The doll lay silently in the long white box with her eyes closed. For a split second, I had a horrible feeling. The beautiful doll with golden hair looked like JonBenet lying in a coffin. And there's an exclamation mark there. I was so shocked that I caught my breath. I had to blink several times. It was a momentary but horrible feeling. And that brings us to number 2, Patsy's attention to detail. Did you notice in that sort of retelling of this aspect, Patsy's incredible, meticulous attention to detail? In retelling the story, Patsy can recall, with an apparently photographic memory, pulling the box down from the shelf, putting it on the washing machine, lifting the lid slowly, and seeing the doll laying silently in the white box with her eyes closed, getting a shock and having to blink several times. I mean, that is incredible detail. You know, Patsy's capable of the finest detail when she wants to, but when she's asked about high-tech shoes, whose flashlight is in the kitchen, feeding JonBenet pineapple, or whether she picked up and handed anyone the ransom note, she seems to draw a blank. But suddenly the vagaries of her memory are peppered with I don't recalls. But she can remember minute details when she wants to. Number 3, embedded confession or something else. Patsy Ramsey had a premonition about her daughter's death. Some think it was a confession. And someone actually said Patsy's leaking information and essentially confessing. Some have speculated that this description from Patsy is an embedded confession. No, it's not that. But I do think this doll was triggering. Because it looked just like JonBenet. Imagine what it looked like if it looked like JonBenet without any clothes. And Linda Arndt said the doll was not clothed. I've suggested how a passerby might be triggered, but couldn't the doll have been triggering for anyone else inside the house? And do you remember this image from the Watts case, dated August 9th, 2018? I've always wondered whether the seed of an idea to annihilate his entire family, including the little girls, came from seeing this. Of course, it's also possible the girls didn't do this, and Watts used this doll to test the dimensions of the oil hatch. Whatever the case, 4 days after this creepy image was taken, all of the Watts children and Watts' wife were deceased. Number 4, 20 years later, Burke seemed to remember something about JonBenet's doll. Now, do you remember that when Burke was on Dr. Phil and he was asked to recall the Christmas and what they got for Christmas, he said, I remember peeking down and seeing an electric train. I was super excited. And then he said, I think she got a big doll house. It's quite an interesting memory he has of JonBenet, that because she got several gifts, but he remembers a big doll house. And then when John spoke to Dr. Phil, he also said, John also remembered the doll. He said that Patsy had sent the doll company a picture of JonBenet and they'd made a doll that supposedly looked like her. And Patsy says the doll lying in the box kind of startled her. Now, number 5, why did Patsy's sister retrieve the My Twin doll if it was so upsetting? And this is an excerpt from The Day After Christmas. He also mentions Patsy specifically wanted Pam to retrieve JonBenet's My Twin doll from under the Christmas tree, the same tree that JonBenet's dead body was lying under 2 days earlier. Now, I'm not 100% sure that this is true, that the My Twin doll was retrieved by Patsy's sister. But if it was, why would they need to retrieve it if it was so upsetting? Number 6, how did the doll get from the Christmas tree to the playroom? Now, in the Ramsey's book, The Death of Innocence, they go into a lot of detail about the My Twin doll, specifically noting how disinterested JonBenet was in the doll. In other words, a lot of effort is made to say, you know, Patsy got this doll for JonBenet, but JonBenet didn't really even play with it. Is that credible? Is that believable? Because there's footage of JonBenet, I think as a 4-year-old, getting a doll and looking very happy about it. Anyway, from The Death of Innocence, quote, Patsy rearranged the gifts in JonBenet's stack so that a very special box would be opened last. Inside that special box was a My Twin doll, fashioned to look like JonBenet from pictures Patsy had furnished the doll maker. And it even included a couple of matching outfits so JonBenet and the doll could dress alike. JonBenet opened the box and examined the doll with a look of curiosity. "Well now, doesn't she look like you?" Patsy asked. JonBenet held the doll at arm's length. That kind of reminds me of John holding JonBenet, her body at arm's length, in the wine cellar and carrying her up the stairs. Anyway, and tilted her head slightly. "I really don't think she looks that much like me," she concluded, and laid the doll to one side. Now that's very different to what Patsy said. Patsy said when she opened the box, it looked just like JonBenet in a coffin. Now JonBenet is saying something different. She quickly returned to her jewelry craft set, which she had previously opened. Patsy looked at me, raised her eyebrows, and gave a disappointed shrug. Sometimes the big gift you had in mind for your kids really wasn't the hit you had expected. Now, I'm not sure I believe this version of events. If JonBenet laid the doll to one side and was more interested in her bicycle and other gifts, how did it end up without clothing, propped up in the playroom only a few hours later? Nowhere in any narrative is there any talk of JonBenet and her friends or anyone else playing with this doll. But you can imagine that it could have been a big deal to JonBenet, and if so, wasn't she playing with it all the time? But if this version of events from the Ramseys is true, how did the My Twin doll make it up to the playroom? Did it Annabelle its way up to the playroom? Also worth noting is JonBenet's grandmother's pet name for JonBenet, Patsy's doll baby. Not to put too fine a point on it, but reducing a real child to a doll, to be dressed, dyed, coiffed, made up, choreographed, photographed, and paraded around, how's that different to turning a person into a thing? Some sort of merchandise. Also, if JonBenet got her own life-size look-alike to such an extent that Patsy specifically had photos sent to the company so the doll could be custom-made, what did Burke make of all of this fuss over his sister? What did Burke make of the doll? And that brings us to Joe Barnhill apparently saying this, and the source is from the Irish Times, 1997. "It would be heartbreaking if that family was involved. They worshipped her almost as if she were Jesus Christ. The parents are good Christian people. They're members down at St. John's Episcopalian Church," Mr. Barnhill said, before he excused himself and went back to his mowing. If it's true that JonBenet was worshipped, how did that make Burke feel? Number 7. Did someone get an idea to put string around JonBenet's neck from this doll? Look at this anonymous email sent to a Candy Rose from a former employee of the Pleasant Company, the makers of the American Doll. And I think this is not the My Twin doll, it's a different doll. The doll's heads are attached with a string that gets in the way when the clothes are changed or the hair is brushed. I was trained to tell parents to use a piece of duct tape to tack it down. If you do that and pull it off, the stuffing comes out of the tape. And so did the mysterious untraceable duct tape on JonBenet's mouth that couldn't be traced to other rolls of duct tape in the Ramsey home, did that come from the doll? Well, I guess we'll never know since these dolls were taken from the crime scene. I'm not going to take it further than that, but in our next analysis, we're going to examine the idea of a parent's attention, not lack of attention, a lot of attention, being harmful to a child. Do you think that is possible? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.